So we are recording now, and I am going to show you how to build this title. So we have a background piece of footage. We are wiping on some text. However, the text is filled with a different fill than just a colored choice. It's actually some footage. So we're going to see how to do that. And then I have a transition happening inside the text that takes it from footage to basically black, which was my original font color. So I'm transitioning from a footage fill to an original color fill. And of course, the whole thing's pushing at us, and then we're doing some stuff to make it extra dramatic, which we may or may not get to those specifics because you already know how to do that. But let's rebuild this. So I am going to say you're still in your font animations project, which is fine. I'm in a different one, but let's make a new composition, and I'm going to call this the virus. If you want to call it something else, that's fine, but that's pretty memorable. The key is to make it something memorable, and my bet is after staring at this for a while, it will stick in your mind. All right, so I did this a couple days ago, so I'm going to be a little rusty, I have a feeling, but I will do my best to try to describe it as cleanly as I can. All right. So the first thing we need is our background. So I had you download a bundle of footage. We're going to need that stuff right now. So if you don't already, and you may not in this project, have a clips uh, folder, then I would probably go ahead into your project tab and I would make a clips folder. I actually called mine video block clips. Make a folder over here. You can right click and do new folder. You can right click in this world and do new folder. Call it clips. And then to go get them, I'm going to do file import. So hopefully you downloaded the files someplace logical. And I think you can do just import file, and then we can select more than one thing. Mine are actually pointed at a different set. I wonder if I can move that. It's not worth it right now. Okay, but in the folder that you downloaded, which should have been called Graphics and Effects Week 9 Online Media, there are about 13 clips in here of footage and various cool stuff that you're going to want to play with. So bring in all of them by selecting them all when you do import, and they'll come in, and then yours will look like mine. All right. So once you have imported in all the footage that we're going to want to mess with, you will see that there is one of those clips, and I'm going to make it so I can read my stuff. Here we go. One of them says St. Louis skyline at sunset. I'm going to drag that in down here, drop it in, and let that start from the beginning of my timeline. And if you were using the default length, we probably have a 10-second timeline, which is pretty good. If it's not as long as 10 seconds, you're probably going to need every bit of those 10 seconds. We haven't been. It's always been that we're just basically building a 3-second thing, but that's not the case this time. So um, this is a 10-second timeline. If you want, you can do Control and Control K, and you can get your composition settings back up, and you can change it to 10-second timeline. All right, so some of you are unzipping your media bundle that you downloaded. I'm gonna hope that that goes quickly. All right, so we have a nice St. Louis shot. If I'm gonna give you stock, I might as well give you something that might come in handy someday in the future when you need it. So I chose St. Louis. All right, so the next thing that I did was I went to the tool, title texting tool, and I typed the virus, which of course I still have my ridiculous font, and it is a ridiculous color, as you probably will too. So pick something cooler than this goofball thing. I actually made it black. So you might want to open the color controls and make it black. I think I did black and then I had just a little bit of a border on it that I made kind of gray. You can do whatever you want. But it just gave it a little bit of depth, which made it look nice. So I say a border, remember that stroke width. I'll have to change my font still, but I have it set to like 5 pixels. It's not a big stroke width, it's just a little bit. But all we've done so far for those that are trying to catch up is we imported all the media that I gave you, and we brought the one that has St. Louis in the title, which you could search, remember, through your footage here. St. Oh, no, not going to let me do it. How about Louis? There you go. You can find it. L-E-O-U. I found it. We've just dropped that in to our timeline as our background, and then we did the title tool and we selected, we typed what we're going to animate, and I am going to do all caps for this. So rather than retyping it, I'm just going to click on the all caps letters here, and then I'm going to go pick a different font because once again, this is not a good font. Doesn't have to be super cool, but something kind of interesting. I kind of like the serifs on that. It's not bad. I'll scale it down a little bit. Around. I like the fact that the horizon line's kind of in the middle of this. It makes it design-wise look nice. Hannah still zipper stuff. Wow. That's a long, slow process. I want a thick font because I want if you just keep that in mind, because it's going to be cool to fill it with stuff. So you might keep that in mind, that a thick font is going to probably play better with the style of thing we're designing. If not thick, at least tall and intimidating, which this one's kind of that way. Maybe I'll do that. It's pretty cool. It's big, it's intimidating. Yeah, like don't forget, you might want to pay attention to safe action, save title, which you can get to in this little section here and turn on. You don't have to have it on the whole time, but I'm turning it on real quick to make sure that I'm not going too terribly far outside of save title. I can turn it off because it's ugly. All right, so this is when we get a little trickier. All right. So, okay. Paying attention to text here from people asking questions. Okay, so we want to do something fancy. And I have to keep referencing what I did before in order to get it straight. So what we want to do is we want to reveal the text using a piece of footage to cut the hole for us to put the text in. So in a sense, we're kind of cutting a hole in our background and revealing this thing. So what I want is I want the paint or burn or ink transition is the clip that I was using. It looks like this. All right, we've got this cool little explosion, and then it all kind of goes wild. All right, it's called paint or burn or ink transition, ERFNE4. I don't know, it's weird. I don't know if you can just search paint or burn. Paint, it's dash or burn. So if you paint, you'll get several of them, and it's the one with ERFNE4. It's the first of the ones that come up if you search for paint. All right, so I'm going to go back to mine. We're going to put that layer on top of everything we've done, which of course is going to black out everything. And now we have this thing that's overtaken our comp. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the relationship between the text and this effect. So I'm going to go into the toggle and switches, and I'm going to toggle back from where we were, where we had access to the motion blur and the 3D stuff. And I'm going to change it to be the normal and trick matte and all that, track matte and all that. And we are going to change the track matte, which always looks at the element above it. And we're going to change it something else. Not alpha, luma matte. There you go. And as you jump through the different ones, you will eventually see that it is, if I'm parked a little bit into my timeline so that I can see what it's doing. Okay, so you might want to do that as you switch through these. But basically, we're going to the track matte and we're changing it to a luma matte. And again, it tells you it's a luma matte based on what, and it's giving you in quotes the name of the layer above it. So it's saying, oh, you want the paint or burn or ink transition to be the luma based key that you're doing? Yes. If you invert it, it'll be wrong and it'll actually erase the text as the stuff reveals. We want it on this so that it wipes it on. All right, so this is already fairly cool. If you play it, you will see that it does a cool job. Now, we have a problem though. The clip runs out before our animation is complete. So it wipes it on, which gives us a lovely full screen text effect. But the problem is, as soon as it runs out, the track runs out, then it won't key the text anymore. So we want to hold that last frame so that it will stay this way. Now, if you have, you'll note another thing I want to point out that could possibly trip you up. Yes, we want the luma. We want the luma setting, luma matte. Sorry, people are asking questions. If you have the eyeball turned on for that top layer, it will be all that you see. And so things are jacked up. So when you're using it to cut a hole, you want to have that track off. And I think as soon as we actually selected Luma, it turned it off for us. But if you know, if you're like me and you're like, oh, all these eyeballs should be on, you could actually undo the effect you just did by turning it on. So I want to point out that that is something that you need to get your head around. The idea that if this is being used, if this weird piece of footage is being used to wipe on essentially this element, you can't have that layer on or it overrides everything and it treats it as full video. And we don't want that. We want to use it as a luma key, which we set when we selected this down here. Now let me check your questions. Okay, cool. Nick found it. All right, we're good. All right, so that's a pretty cool effect. The only problem is it runs out. So what do we want to do? What we really want is this last frame of footage to hold for us. So I did a search for hold and I didn't find anything. So I went to freeze and you'll notice that under the layer menu, under the subcategory of time, there is a freeze on last frame. That is what we want to select. So I'm on a Mac, it's super easy. I went to help, I searched for it, and if I select it here, it will actually do it for me. You may have to navigate to it manually, but we want to freeze on the last frame, and it is found under the layer menu, under the sublayer time, and then freeze on last frame. So when I select that, it basically just made my clip appear to be longer, but it still does its animation stuff on the front, but when it hits the last keyframe, it stays there. And now it's up the whole time, and basically my text won't pop off. All right, so that is a handy trick. If you're animating something or you need a piece of video that isn't long enough, and you can't really slow it down and there's nothing movement-wise happening in your footage, you could potentially just hold on the last frame and then boom, it will be as long as you need it to be. So that worked really well for us here. Now, all we've done is reveal our text, which is cool because we brought it on in a neat way. However, that's not the overall effect. What we had going in my example was we had footage inside here. Yeah, so how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to show you. All right, sorry, I have to double check my work on this so that I know what I'm doing. All right, so I want to use this particular background, liquid artistic movement. So I'm going to see if movement is a good search word. It gave me two options. What about liquid? Liquid works, same deal. It's the one with 57 in the number or in the title. So if you search liquid, two clips come up. One is labeled with a 57 towards the end of the title, and the other one's labeled 61. We want the 57 one. And I am actually going to take that layer and I am going to put it underneath my title. I think. And then we get real fun. Hear feedback. Someone has a question. All right, we want to pre-compose these elements. So the two elements that we just put together, the text itself and the funky colored background, if you highlight them both, you then can right click and do pre-compose. All right, and it says, I'm gonna make a pre-comp. Do you want to move the items out of essentially this stack to make it a separate comp that you can reference? So in a sense, yes, it is defaulting to what we want. All you have to do is leave it to the default setting and it should do what we want. All right, now if you go into the pre-comp, you will see the footage. And this is where I have to reverse engineer what I did here. So far over. Sorry, this is where I get rusty again. All right, our goal is to do this. So we have, we want to get the letters filled with this. So in order to do that, I'm going to, again, inside this new pre-comp that it made, we're going to go into it and we're going to say, all right, I want this background to be an inverted alpha. Nope, I'm sorry, just an alpha. So the top choice. All right, alpha mat the virus. So it's the top choice of the four that come up. And again, I'm selecting the bottom layer. I'm basically saying only show me the bottom layer based on the alpha channel that's built into the track above it, which in this case is the text. All right, so that's why you end up with a hole cut by the text and it is filled with the thing below it. All right, so this is our pre-comp. Now if I go back to my original, I need to name this something else because I'm going to get confused. You will see that it is already doing what we want. The only thing that has gone away is our cool reveal. So now it's up the whole time. Well, our cool reveal was happening because we had the track mat set to the right thing. And when we pre-comped this, that turned off and went back to none. So in a sense, there is no transition at this point. It's just up the whole time. So if you go to the track mat for that pre-comp, meaning I want to bring on this virus word filled in that way using the information above it, then I'm going to select what I did before, which is the Luma mat. And now it will wipe on the way that it did before, but it's wiping on the comped version of our text, which has the words filling in to it. All right, I'll let that loop and double check our messages. All right. Were we supposed to do something before we combined them? Well, let's again reverse engineer what I have. So my pre-comp, we basically built it to be just plain text. And then we said, okay, I want to comp two things together. So we put the weird swirly texture underneath our text, highlighted them both, right clicked and said pre-comp. And when it did that, it opened them in a separate composition. When it did that, we then could go in and say, okay, I want the texture underneath revealed by the Luma information of the thing above it. So I changed my settings down here at the bottom to be Luma and Alpha, and that gave me the swirling text or texture inside my text. Okay, so yes, once you bring the swirly stuff into your first comp, the very first one, the main one, all it did was basically cover the screen. And so we comped it together with the text. So select both layers, the new swirly layer and your original virus text, select them together, right click, pre-compose, and then it will open them in a separate thing in its own comp, and it will let you name it. Mine defaulted to pre-comp 3 because I already have two others in this project. Yours probably went pre-comp 1. And then the right way to set it is Luma for your text layer, Alpha for your swirly background layer, and it should look like this when you're done. No animation, nothing, just the video playing inside the text over black, which is your background color. All right. Once that is working, then when you go back to your original project, the first one you started with, you see that the pre-comp took the place of those two layers, and basically it has no setting, so it doesn't animate on anymore the way we had our black text animating on, which kind of sucks. So now we want it to go back to looking at this top layer and animating on based on that. So we're going to change it from none to a Luma matte. And when you do that, now it will wipe on with the brightness of the track above it. So hopefully that is working for everybody. And now you have a pretty cool effect. The only thing we have left to do is I want it to go to a black version of that text so that it essentially sort of rots from the inside after it reveals. So in order to do that, I need to put the original text, which is black, right? We just built it as a black text thing. I need to go get those again. So you can go back into your pre-comp and select the virus layer and do Command or Control C to copy. So we're copying and pasting that original layer, so I don't have to rebuild it, and then adding it back to my original comp. So it will go on top by default. All right, so it's not on. If I turn it on, it overrides everything that I have going on, and now I just have black text up the whole time. So I don't want it on yet because it's too much. Actually, I guess we can turn it on. The point is just understand that it's covering up all that cool stuff we just did with a perfect black version of it sitting there. But we already know how to wipe on something based on a track that sits above it. So we're going to go get a slightly different one that is going to reveal the black text over the top of what we already built. But we want to wipe it on using the luminance information of another piece of footage. So if I go back to mine, I used the responsive paint bleed bloom. I'm going to search for bleed and hope that that's the right word. Yep, if you search for the word bleed, it will be the only clip that comes up. So if you grab that clip and put it on top of everything, it of course will be on by default, and you will see that this is a big giant blob, right? So we want to actually use it as a way to reveal our text. So we want to go to the text version and we want to change it hard time. Hold on. That's not it. Pardon me. I will get this figured out. What did I do? We're doing the right thing. I'm just not setting something right. Yeah, it's a luminance inverse of the track above it. That should do it. Iris, go to this. Oh, because the eyeball's on. Turn the eyeball off for that layer. See, it tripped me up. This is the very thing I told you to pay attention to. If you're going to use a track as an effect track, then you don't want the eyeball on because you'll never see anything happen. So if I turn the eyeball off and then set it to Luma inverted, now you will see that my first wipe happens, and then as it plays out, black eventually overtakes all the color, and the effect is almost perfect. Except in this example, you'll notice in the 10 seconds that that effect has to play out, my entire words do not turn black. So that sucks. What can I do to fix it? Well, that track has the ability to scale. So let's go to that track and let's hit the letter S for scaling controls and let's scale it up. And notice I can scale it up to where my text turns completely black. Why? Well, if I turn on the eyeball, you'll see that I'm just basically zooming in. When I scale it up, I'm zooming in on that blob. So once you have it scaled to the point where your text is completely revealed and there's no color in the letters anymore, then you know you've gone far enough. And as you go back into your animation, now the black, it wipes on with the color, the black eventually starts coming in and overtakes it. And because we scaled it up, it eventually overtakes the entirety of the letters. And now the original black color that we chose is the way that the text looks. I'm going to play mine and look at questions and see if you have that all, you got it working. It cut out right when you put the colorful layer. Yeah, that was a while ago, so I'm not worried about that. Okay. So that is the effect. I was doing a null effect and I was pushing that stuff towards us just to be fancy, but we're not going to go through that. Just know that you can add that and make the virus text come at us. I have to null it because we have two versions of the text. We have the colored version, which is happening inside of pre-comp, and then over the top of that text, we have it going to a black version. So as you know, there's text inside the pre-comp and there's text sitting here. So if I try to scale one or two of those, they'll get out of sync and it'll look weird. But if I create a null and I link them together, then all of those effects will move together and the text will appear to change as it moves at the camera. All right, we did nulls before, so I'm not going to waste our time doing that. All right, so you all have been really patient. I am going to stop recording here.